Feedback by RQK. Chapter 10. Expunge. Chrysalis. Failure. Sombra. Failure. Star Swirl. Amethyst Key. Luna. Sunset Simmer. Twilight Sparkle. Now the latest failure. Princess Celestia stared into the picture frame. A princess stared back at her. A princess, her former protege, adorned with a crown and a large dress that brought out her radiance. But the childlike smile drew Celestia's eyes above everything else. That smile, full of wonder at the things around her, taking in all the sights and cherishing every moment. The same eyes he had seen several years prior. The same eyes that had looked up at her just before naming her faithful student. The same eyes that bounced the room with glee. The one success he thought she had, Celestia followed her. Regalia felt even heavier than before. Celestia strained under their pull. With a grimace, she stepped out of them. She practically threw every piece into its place on the rack atop of the desk, with the exception of her crown. For a long moment she held it in front of her. Her eyes gazed over every piece. The crown was the symbol of her place. It marked her the ruler of Equestria. Something that represented and required her success. A shiver down the entirety of her spine. I can't look at this, she thought. She went to place it on the desk like she normally had it, but instead it toppled lopsidedly into a crooked position. She made no attempt to correct it. Instead, she took the picture of Twilight and drifted into the adjacent room. Celestia sidled up to another desk in the back corner. She placed the picture frame on the corner before taking a seat in front of the mirror. Instead, she took the picture of Twilight and drifted into the adjacent room. Celestia sidled up to another desk in the back corner. She placed the picture frame on the corner before taking a seat in front of the mirror. On most days, her mane required little grooming, and on days like today, the physical demand was at a minimum in favor of court hearings and signing documents. Very little to disturb her image. Celestia looked her reflection up and down. She noticed every little split end, every little knot, every little spot of missed dirt. She noticed the sight bags under her eyes, the misplaced red in her face, the mismatched phrase her otherwise sparkling white coat. I look like a mess, Celestia thought as she scanned her features, trying to recognize the mirror in the mirror, trying to recognize the image of a princess that peered out to her every time she stepped in front of her reflection. Holy sleep, her ground grew deeper. Another quick glance at Twilight's picture sealed the deal. Because I am nothing but a mess. She gave the stranger in the mirror an accusatory glare. Who are you to be a princess? She thought. Who are you to call yourself a ruler? A protector? Celestia cast a piercing glare on the reflection. How can you protect a country? You could not even protect her. The more she stared at the mirror in the mirror, the more she trembled. The princess ground her teeth together. Hers clung to the desk like she was hanging off a cliff. Then it occurred to Celestia just who the mirror in the mirror was. How could I? Celestia slammed her head in the desk. The force of the blow toppled the picture of Twilight over the side. The picture landed with an audible crack, coating the floor in glassy dust. She rested her hair there, as every little thought and memory she ever had of Twilight Sparkle flowed through her mind. The friendship letters, the ascension, the rough waters at the wedding, defeating Lord T-Rex, the small smiles, the warm conversations, the occasional night by the fire. Celestia wept. Tear after tear flowed down her face and drifted to the lacquer. A small puddle formed underneath her muzzle with each new drop, as her sobs slowly grew in volume. Twilight had done everything right. Celestia had done everything wrong. Celestia was still alive. And Twilight, her better in so many ways, was not. Celestia's cries echoed throughout the room. The walls shook, the furniture trembled. The possibility could be heard well down the hall skipped over her head. They echoed into the night, into the endless void, with no reprieve in sight. The steady pitter-patter of rain hitting the windows, or in one case, magical barrier around the balcony, combined with the simultaneously crusade against the stone castle's walls, howled throughout the tower. The building rocked as roaring thunder slammed into it, vibrating several objects within into a chorus of what sounded like a metallic clang. Spike punted one of the cushions into the wall. He watched it bounce lightly off the surface, before he turned to another pillow, tugged it in as well with a frustrated cry. On the couch, Sunset Simmer isolated herself behind a curled-up position. Her eyes rocked side from side in a searching manner. Spike ignored the rumbling in his stomach and skipped over to where the others stood. Applejack paced about furtively. I can't believe it. Rarity cradled her face with her hooves. We should have known from the start that this was a long shot. While Fluttershy's eyes remained glued to the floor, the markings of a scowl flashed across her features for a brief instant. Applejack shook her head. I can't believe it. Rainbow Dash strapped her hooves against the wall once more. There were resulting bangs, mixed with torrential booms from the storm outside. Girls, Pinkie Pie interjected, flapping her forelegs about. We only have a few hours left. We need to think of something. Spike held himself close. They weren't in the place he wanted to be. Somehow, it hadn't even occurred to him that they would arrive at this ending. But even then, he felt it starting to bear down at him, and it was crushing. What we do? What we do? Pinkie Pie cried. We should have done something else, Vanity grumbled, crossing her forelegs. Applejack tried to hide her face behind her Stetson. I was so sure this thing with the stones was going to work. And now here we are, and it didn't work. But didn't you hear what Sunset said earlier, though? Pinkie Pie interjected. She said if this happened, then us getting the stones was never going to work. Rarity's eyes twitched. But that's just it, dear. If this was never going to work, then we should have tried something else, she snarled. We are forced to follow Sunset Simmer so quickly. Several gasps rose up in silence. Spike opened his mouth to reply, but then realized doing so would have made him contradict her. Instead, crossed his arms and grimaced. Rarity! Pinkie Pie exclaimed. That's mean! Fluttershy shook her head. I'm afraid I agree with Rarity. Oh, for Alliance sakes! Applejack threw her hose into the air. Okay, I never gonna see what's wrong here! Rainbow Dash shot up. Yeah, what's the big idea? You two are the ones to talk! Rarity scoffed, pointing his accusatory hoof. You didn't even complete your task! The hairs on Rainbow Dash's face stood on end. Oh, don't you bucking jeer! Applejack brandished her hoof. Why, I oughta... Fluttershy shook her head. Yeah, Rarity. Rarity went over her right eyebrow. The Yellow Pegasus frowned. That was really mean. Yeah, Pinkie Pie yelled. That was a low blow. Rarity sighed. Fine, but I still say that Sunset should be... No, you know what? Fine, Applejack exclaimed. Blame me and Rainbow Dash. Go on right ahead, but you keep Sunset out of this. We did what we could, and what we would was not enough. She pointed towards Sunset on the couch. You can't blame her for trying. She tried harder than all of us even. Pinkie Pie sickened. Rarity glowered for a moment, before casting a glance over at the fetal mare on the couch. Sunset's blank expression melted in her response, and the white unicorn hung her head. Spike decided to barge in on that moment. Stop it! Do any of you remember what Twilight said? He asked, pointing at the crystal ball. She says she could do something if she had all the stones. Sunset did exactly what Twilight talked about. We did exactly what Twilight talked about. Applejack snorted. That's right. We did the only thing we could do at the time. She said with a stamp of her hoof. Weren't nothing else we could have done. Several calls erupted from the ball. Each cough became increasingly labored until finally Twilight sounded like she was about to choke. They looked to find Twilight Sparkle sprawled across the floor, rubbing her temple amidst several pained moans. Rarity shook her head. Man, we must simply do something now! She exclaimed. I know! Applejack cried. Fluttershy frowned. But what? Applejack gnashed her teeth together. I don't know! Rainbow Dash looked out the window, past the sheets of flowing water, the sky out for tiny shreds of fleeting daylight. The sun would set soon. Well, we need to think of something, and we need to think of it now! We're running out of time. A flash of lightning outside the tower lit up the room, casting their silhouettes across the hall. A loud boom accompanied it, which made them shiver. Spike could feel the ever-diminishing time trying to choke him. Every second the feeling worsened. Somehow, he could name the dread festering in his stomach. Spike felt his body grow cold, and he looked at the downpour outside. Where were they to go from there? For once, Spike had no answer. Rarity felt another hair split off as he watched the mare inside the ball. Twilight! Tell me what you want us to do! Tell me! Tell me! Tell me! Twilight scowled as she folded another piece of paper and placed it on top of the stack. She levitated over the next set of readings and folded those to the top of the stack as well. I'm telling you like I told the others, Rarity. There's nothing you could do now, Twilight replied at length. You should have known that this was coming. Answer this question! Don't you dare tell me to give up on you! I'm sorry. There is nothing you could do. Really and truly. Rarity shifted uncomfortably on the couch. She glanced at each of the others, most of whom were gathered in a tight circle as they ran their mental wheels. Every so often, few words of suggestion would pass between them, only to be shot down with simple rebuttals. Twilight levitated over the various note cards and miscellaneous scribbles that had accumulated over the past few days. I'm going to pour my remaining life energy into the door as the nameless tries to surface. That will kill it forever, she said before throwing the cords into the wastebasket at the head of the stairs. And that will be the end of it. Verity pounded her head against the ball. But Twilight, that will kill you too! Don't you even think about making the same mistake that our Twilight did! Twilight didn't answer. Instead, she used her magic to grab the crystal ball before toting it down the staircase. Verity sighed and thought the ball downwards to follow. Twilight slogged over to the kitchen, where she set the ball on the counter. For a moment she leaned against the wood, trying to catch her breath. If I had the chance to do things differently, she croaked, maybe I would. Maybe I wouldn't do all this. Verity saw spite glance out of the corner of his eye. But this is it, Twilight said, her voice just about to whisper. It's over. I'm finished. The handle to the door jiggled, causing Twilight to spring backwards in alarm. Even clear across the tower, Twilight could see the handle oscillate up and down, as if some pony was trying to enter. Verity framed. What in Hannah's name is going on now? Huh? Came Rainbow Dash's voice from the other side of the door. Huh? Spice's voice said. Does he be here? A drop of sweat appeared on Twilight's brow as she stared the door down. She raised the hoof to trot over, but failed to take the first step. Verity gasped. Sweet Celestia! Girls, come quick! She squeaked as she frantically waved them over. 4 mares and a dragon leapt up from the floor and scurried over to where Rarity sat. Rarity turned, hopped off the couch so they could crowd around. 9 days ago, Verity said, we came to pick up Twilight to take her to the opera, remember? Pinkie Pie gasped. Yes, I do! The door thumped a few times. Twilight! Rainbow Dash's voice called. Are you in there? Applejack let her mouth go slack for a moment. No, why? What's happening now? Twilight's ears twitched as she listened to what Rarity had said. Swallowing, she twitched over to the door and stopped just short of it. Hi, every pony. Twilight! Twilight, hey! Let us in! Rainbow Dash's voice said as he jingled the handle again. Rarity furrowed her brow as he thought the balls flew closer to the door. Twilight fought through her crestfallen expression and shook her head. Sorry, girls. I can't do that right now. Why? Asked Rainbow Dash's voice. Rainbow Dash blinked. Wait, this is... Pinkie Pie jabbed a hoof toward the ball. This is when she turned us away. It's dangerous to be in here right now, Twilight exclaimed. Twilight, we've handled dangerous things before, Applejack's voice said. It's really serious business, and I can't get you unfaulted this time. I'm sorry, but please, trust me on this one. Twilight Dawning, Verity's voice chuckled. We're going to see Dawn Giovanni together. You must come with us. Then go and have fun. Twilight replied without missing a beat. Don't you worry about me. Applejack furrowed her brow and touched a hoof to the ball. Wait a sec! Listen! Twilight looked upwards with a raised eyebrow. This all's happened before! You gotta talk to us this time! Don't do the same thing our Twilight did! Verity's shouted through the door. Verity nodded. Twilight, it's just us. This is it. This is your second chance. You said you were worried about running into other ponies. You said if you had another chance, you'd take it. This is it. Darn the tether, Twilight, Applejack said in agreement. Let us in. Go, Twilight, voiced I agreed. Come on, Twilight, Pinkie Pie shouted. Pinkie Pie's voice said. I hear voices, Twilight. Are there any ponies in there with you? First I gasped and pointed toward the door. We heard us. Help them, Twilight! Verity yelled. Let them in! Let us in! Twilight ground her teeth together as she stared the wood down. She reached out to turn the lock and open the door, but shied away. Finally, Twilight turned and slumped against the wooden frame. She sat for what seemed like an eternity with a contemplative expression. Seeds of her grimace flashed across her features every few moments. Twilight glanced up the words. Are all of you alive in the world above mine? She whispered. Spike shuddered. What? Sus's head popped up from behind him. The mare leaned in on Spike's shoulder, and watched without even acknowledging her own presence. Twilight Sparkle closed her eyes with heavy resignation. No. The clap of thunder boomed outside, taking the tower. Verity's mouth all but fell to the floor. What are you? Twilight! Rainbow Dash screamed. I hear them too, Rainbow Dash's voice said. What's going on, Twilight? Can you at least tell us? Twilight shook her head. No. Twilight Sparkle! Verity roared. What are you doing? Applejack banged a hoof against the ball. Where tarnation, Twi? Oh, my bucking! Rainbow Dash cursed before placing a hoof on the ball. No! Don't you bucking dare! Come on, Twilight! Vice's voice exclaimed. Talk to us! Talk to me! Rainbow Dash turned her attention to the door. You have to stop her! Rainbow cried. Open that door! Verity shuddered before turning her attention to the door as well. Kick it down! I'm sorry, Twilight replied, voice growing tremulous. I don't need you right now. Please, just go away. Twi! Applejack cried. Twilight! Spike's voice cried. Twilight! Piggy cried. Verity heard a horrible squeak behind her hooves. Twilight gnashed her teeth together and appeared to tear something apart, even with her eyes still closed. A moment later, she tilted her head back and screamed into the sky. Go away! Applejack frantically pounded a desperate hoof against the glass. Don't you walk away! Verity let out a short, uncontained, and somewhat desperate scream. This is not happening! This is not happening! This is not happening! This is not happening! Fan! Applejack's voice finally scoffed. Have it your way, Twilight. Please, not like we came all this way here just for you anyways. Don't you walk away, you cold-hearted idiot! Applejack yelled. Twilight remained pressed against the doorway. Elkhorn held her breath, not daring to move so much as an inch from her spot. Rainbow Dash almost collapsed to the floor. Her knees shook and her features quivered. No! I guess now's not a good time, Fireside's faint voice said. We should just try again later. Many long and silent seconds passed. The room stayed still and quiet. The ponies within remained equally so. The roar of torrential downpour outside returned in full force and dominated the area. Distant booms made their way in, shaking the glass windows and rattling the tile on the counter. Verity let her head fall against the bell in defeat. Oh my goodness! See? Fireside croaked. Sunset gulped. Was that how it happened before? Applejack threw her hat to the floor. That's exactly how it happened! That was it. It was set in stone. Verity heard a deep wooden thump and snapped to attention. She looked around a moment before it realized it had come out of the ball. She looked. Twilight banged the door with her hoof again as he slid down the frame. The princess let out what sounded like an agonizing scream. Futilely banged against the door a few more times before she collapsed completely into a series of shrill wails. Screams of liquid poured out of her down Twilight's face as her labored cries cascaded around the tower. Oh, Celestia! Oh, Celestia! Piggy Pie's mane lost its volume and fell to her sides. Piggy then buried her face in her hooves and wept. Fireside buried herself into Applejack, who in turn held her close without a word. Sunset hung her head and defeatedly slunk off. The remaining three held still as statues as he looked down upon the broken mare within the ball. Spike opened his mouth to say something, but what seemed like the 20th take, he growled instead and retreated. With that, just like every other time before that, the shaking in his hands worsened. Twilight floated several pieces off the machine, dislodging parts between the occasional sob. The various plates and beams accumulated into a pile in the very back corner of the room. Twilight threw a bunch of screws into the pile before wiping her face in dirt and water. Several thoughts swam through the dragon's head. He couldn't decide which one he wanted out. But with how his entire body was shuddering, the heat crawling up his spine, he could tell that something would out. Spike scratched another itch on his head. His hands balled the fence against his will. He tried to control his breath, but found the control steadily starting to escape him. Twilight sat back and examined her work. Shook her head with an exasperated huff, then walked to the desk. She used her magic to pick up the journal. the item which she had been working on for the past few days. The mare flipped through several pages, taking a long slide as he hit a hoof down to some advanced equations, before she snapped the book shut. Her eyes glided over the trash bin near the stairs. Twilight. Twilight didn't look away from the trash bin. Yes? Why did you do it? Twilight sniffed. It's because if I said it before, I'll say it again. I don't want to lose you. And I don't want to lose you either, Twilight. Please. Spike pleaded. I'm so sorry, Spike. But we're out of time. I had to stop the Nameless, or else it'll get out. We could have stopped it together, he choked. Twilight, you should have said something. You should have said anything. You should have let us in. Twilight solemnly shook her head. Out of the question. She said in a firm, pointed manner as he levitated a box of matches. Spike felt a tingle down his spine. What are you doing? I'm expunging all the data, she said. I had to preserve the loop. But the loop is going to get you killed, Twilight! All of you! He yelled. And it's going to save you! All of you! The others looked up at the moment. One by one they wandered over. They remained quiet and kept their distance, but they did so with each other. They hailed each other as they watched with concerned expressions. I chose this path, Spike! Twilight screamed. I chose it several days ago! I will not let this monster tether to you! Not now! Not ever! Spike threw her claw in the air. That's insane! That's crazy, Twilight! Spike took a moment to rub his face in frustration. Twilight, that means you'll die! The mare hung her head. I know. Spike flinched. The several words climbed on top of his mouth, sunk down again. He knew that to respond to that required words he did not have. Twilight struck a match and held her insulting flame up to her eyes. Twilight cantered over the trash can and stared at the countless scraps and notes that he had placed within. She dropped the match into the bin and contents lit up. The flames danced within the receptacle and grew by the moment. I'm so scared, Twilight quivered. I didn't think things would end this way. I'm so afraid. Spike furrowed his brow. Twilight. But I know how it works, she exclaimed, stamping her hoof against the floor. You are living proof of that. But that doesn't make dying any less harder. My life is over. What about us? We're still here without you. Spike fired back. Twilight flinched. I don't think I could deal with it. I only got this far because I thought maybe, just maybe we'd get you back. I thought we could save you, Twilight. I need you. Spike, I can't do it. I can't. Spike! Spike glanced at his ball against the call. I can't lose you again. Twilight reeled. Every hint of anger and expressive vanished as her mouth fell against her will. She blinked several times, trying to stave off the urge to let more tears fall. She clutched at her chest as she was afraid her very heart would shrivel up and stop. For many long moments, Spike couldn't believe what he had just said either, but it was true. His heart thumped, scales ached, yet no part of him wanted to take it back. Spike sighed. I can't. Twilight grimaced. The frown drew so deep that her mouth appeared like it would fall off her face. Twilight swallowed. Oh, Spike, she croaked. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. Twilight took a quill out and searched for a piece of paper. She found one which, as she examined it, turned out to be the paper that contained her diagram map of the caverns. Twilight flipped it over so the blank side and pressed the quill to the parchment. This is the way it ends. I'm sorry, Spike, for everything. Spike watched with a crestfallen expression. Twilight held the quill over her paper. I know this won't mean much, but I owe this to you at least. The other six shared uneven glances. A few swallowed. Dear everyone. Twilight muttered the words aloud as they made them onto the paper. If you are reading this, it means I've lost my life repulsing a great evil. Pink and Mia snored as he tried to contain the shivers down her spine. In a flash, the mare disappeared up the stairs before she reappeared with the farewell note in her mouth. I had too little time to prepare for it. I was unable to think of any other way. My hooves were tied. The seven of them glanced over the contents of the letter in Pink and Mia's hooves. Strained glances passed between them as the letter slowly realized itself. You don't want to know what things would have happened had this thing got out. I started to think of it, and I take solace in the fact that I could spare you that knowledge. But I was able to shut the door on it, and in doing so I terminated it permanently. It will never befall Equestria. Several Twilight's tears splattered on several occasions as the mayor bent for support. Quill paused as the mayor looked out the window. It was to the newly risen moon. A moon whose face had changed since he moved to Ponyville. A moon whose face had changed when everything began. Twilight looked back down at the paper and cursed under her breath. These past years have been the best of my life. Thank you for the wonderful memories. Thank you all. Your faithful friend, Twilight Sparkle. For some moments, Twilight considered her work, even though through her sobs. Her quill hovered over the word faithful and linking over her choice there, as if debating whether or not it was the right one. Finally, Twilight settled for throwing the quill across the room in a small fit of rage. Spike fell onto his haunches, set the ball to the ground, and buried his face into his hands. He resisted the urge to cry out several things he knew he would regret. He resisted the urge to hurl the ball out of frustration because he knew he would regret it. He had to resist the urge to contradict Twilight more than he already had, because he knew somehow she was right. Twilight wiped her face before she had settled on the journal once more, lifted it up, and scanned the cover. Before she turned to the somewhat dismissive inferno within the trash bin. Twilight tossed the journal into the trash. The flames within responded with renewed energy. Shrinking upwards, they engulfed the tome. Twilight watched the book writhe about as the fire ate it, all with a cold expression on her face. The white gaze in her eyes reflected the dancing flames. As the inferno grew, the flickering glow cast itself onto the walls in greater magnitudes as the cackles and crackles grew louder and louder. Spike knew Twilight was right. This was the way it ended. Spike had known from the start. His mind drifted to the tar mess that Pinkie Pie had found in the trash a few days ago. He knew it even more. Nothing had changed. Thus, the future refused to change.